Folks, Lil Durk's situation is very, very bad. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, okay? A lot of people have said he's cooked. A lot of people have said he's finished. He's got no chance of beating these murder-for-hire charges that seem pretty easy to connect to him, but there is now a great hope, okay? There is a great silver-haired hope. He has hired Brian Steele, okay? The guy that got Young Thug off of his serious racketeering charges, okay? Some have described it as Brian Steele helped Young Thug get away with murder, metaphorically of speaking, of course, in the courtroom. But basically, he actually managed to get Young Thug back out here in these streets after Young Thug was accused of leading a serious conspiracy, a criminal gang that did actually commit murder at least once. Brian Steele might be the guy to get him off. Now, this all comes out amid some interesting news, okay? Lil Durk's trial was actually delayed until August 2026. And he basically didn't necessarily get the severance that he was looking for. So he was trying to pull a smart little slippery move, separating his trial from his alleged accomplices. And I think the idea was that he could let them go for trial first, even if Durk went for trial first, basically to separate it and try and make it so Durk's going to be not guilty of the conspiracy to do the murder for hire, and that his homeboys, if they go down for murder, well, that was their little errand that they ran on themselves, okay? His trial was delayed until August. The judge denied the severance request. He was trying to get his speedy trial on, and they weren't letting it happen. Okay, the judge denied a request from his co-defendants to be tried separately. That play, unfortunately, didn't work out. So they would be still facing a joint trial. It's currently set for August the 20th, 2026, which would be just about 4 years from when the murder actually happened. Or would it be 3 years? 22, 3, 4, 5. 22 to 3, 4, 5, 6. That would be 4 years. It would actually be 4 years since the murder took place. So basically, the judge rejected the request for separating the trials, emphasized the defendants are accused of participating in the same alleged conspiracy and are typically tried together. The bar for separation is high. That would have been a good move. The judge isn't feeling it, all right? And they noted that a lot of the evidence would overlap regardless of whether the cases were separated, making a joint trial the most appropriate route forward. That was probably a very, very disappointing result for Durk. But back to Brian Steele, the great hope that Durk might be actually getting freed. During a recent appearance on Killer Mike's podcast, Brian Steele confidently stated that the feds really aren't a problem, all right? And he would elaborate basically on why they have such a high conviction rate unless you got Brian Steele in your corner. This is basically what he said. Wait a minute.
So 94. I'll give you.
Explaining that they drop so much evidence onto you that it's hard to even get through it. And now that's apparently true because Lil Durk's case, there's apparently thousands and thousands and thousands, gigabytes to terabytes of files, okay? But interestingly, okay, Brian Steele is saying that, you know, that 95% conviction rate is not with us, not with my firm. If you drop the bag, but he's saying that it is very expensive. It costs a lot of money to have Brian Steele on your side. Now, following his success with Young Thug, he also made another deal with the devil. He would join Diddy's defense team, actually helping Diddy beat his most serious life sentence facing charges. And basically, Diddy would not have walked away with a 50-month sentence without the help of Mr. Brian Steele. So look, he's a good lawyer, right? He's very good. He can whitewash Diddy's history. You know, let's overlook the fact that, you know, some people weren't so happy to be there. Let's overlook the fact that he was beating the brakes off of Cassie in a hotel hallway. And that clearly is indicative of the way that he was treating people that were trying to escape. But anyway, all right, they want to... Brian Steele's a master, all right? He's a master of this, and he's going to go and do the same thing for Lil Durk. Now, fans would go crazy over the news that Brian Steele would be hired by Lil Durk, and people would be claiming that Lil Durk is building an unstoppable legal army. He's got Brian Steele, and he's got billion-dollar lawyer Drew Findling. He is throwing everything at the wall and seeing what will stick, and people are ecstatic in the Lil Durk subreddit. They're saying, Durk hires Brian Steele, yes! They are overjoyed. That's what the F you do, bro. I was waiting for this. He's building an army of high-quality lawyers. Right, that one lawyer from Insta was right. Had Durk not said that stuff on Academics podcast, and if he got that severance, the case will be so easy. Hopefully he still beats it. All right, the same Trenches News said it first, but yeah, I agree. Drew showed his hand by going on DJ Academics and Vlad. All right, so I think it's interesting. It's smart, really, that Drew Findling went on both of those podcasts, because then you can say, well, this is something that everybody's doing. I've been on those podcasts, you know, it's all good. But Durk did tell on himself in those interviews. Let's be honest with ourselves here, okay? People saying Drew and Brian Steele together. Even Durk must know his odds aren't looking good, all right? He's still got Drew on the case, both of these lawyers together, all right? They're saying, let's go OTF in 5. They're saying he's coming home. So a lot of people are drinking the Kool-Aid on Durk coming home. Now, okay, they're saying he might be coming home. They're posting this just because Brian Steele said, "Oh, not with us. They ain't got no 94% conviction rate." They're saying he might be coming home. This is the truth, all right? Thug's case was a state case, not a Fed case, but hopefully Drew Findling and Brian Steele can get the goat out of that jam. Saying he was on the Diddy case too. They're saying he saved him. Diddy was looking at 20 years and he got 2.5. Well, that's the thing. It's very easy to kind of whitewash the situation and say you saved him. Bro's sitting in 50 months of federal confinement. Is that a win for what you said was only prostitution? I don't know. Bro, y'all be confused. That's conviction rate is based on everything like probation and everything included. Durk got some badass lawyers right now. Just watch how that turn out. They don't got nothing on him apart from all the stuff they got on him. They're saying that Brian Steele is the judge's biggest op. They're saying didn't beat that case and gave thugs 15 years probation. Couldn't get thugs property back or chains. Wow, what a massive lower. Taking a plea in a state case, images of a federal case. He's folding. They're saying Steele advised Thug not to take the deal. Thug didn't want to stay in jail, so the trial just ended, right? They're saying he needs to pull it out. He's going to pull it out in clutch, all right? He's going to save him, but I don't know. I personally am not sure if it's going to be enough. Oh boy, that's a shame that this content has been removed, but I think this was what we already knew, that Brian Steele is on the case. Brian Steele and Drew Findling, that's a whole lot of money. Durk's either going to come home or he's going to be free. He's going to be doing life in prison. But one thing's for sure, he will not have a lot of money left at the end of this, okay? His life is on the line. He's literally got to send the blitz. He's going all in. Fair thing, though. I'm not even going to lie. Based on the fact that he's got them two, he's beaten the case. Remember this comment. Paid lawyers lose cases all the time. It's definitely a good look for these lawyers. It's definitely good profile. Now, people would point to an interesting old tweet where Young Thug actually claimed that he was the one who sent Brian Steele to help Durk. This is something that was apparently denied. Durk's girl, India, basically denied that this was the case, said bro wasn't lying. The Young Thug tweeted, all you new junkies in OTF just know I'm the one that sent Brian Steele to help him on my dime. All right? All new feds in DOJ just know I'm the one who sent evidence to help y'all on my time. They still think Young Thug bit the cheese, unfortunately, and a bologna sandwich while he was there, but we've all moved on from that, okay? Now, OTF members would come out once again and deny Thug had anything to do with Brian Steele joining the team, okay? This basically was somebody basically saying, FYI, Durk has his own money, stop playing with him. If you know, free Durk. They're saying that basically Thug didn't pay the bill. Saying Durk, people are calling out people running with the narrative like Thug hired Brian Steele to help him. They're saying Thug obviously sent him his way. Not going to say Thug hired him, but he probably just put him on. Saying or Durk could have reached out on his own time and his own dime. You be talking like he exclusively only defends Thug. That dude Brian Steele been doing this since the 90s. Why is Thug acting like Brian Steele's a gatekeeper for his artists or something? Dude just got Diddy off on 4 years when he was facing 40. He'll work for whoever can afford him. People saying... So, I mean, Thug said this 6 months before he was even his attorney, so now it's happened. I'm pretty sure he's not capping. Some people are believing it. Now, the lawyer Mo Gangat, okay, lawyer for workers, he's been pretty prolific on hip-hop cases over the last couple of years. He would break down his thoughts on the Durk case, basically arguing that the Fed's evidence might not be as airtight as people think. Let's hear him.
Trial has been pushed to August 2026. If you listen to the noise, all you're going to hear is Durk is cooked. Nobody's there for Durk. Motion denied. But that's just the noise. The fact of the matter is his trial team has won a number of points in this case. The indictments, there's been 3 indictments, and each time the allegations against Durk have thinned out. Some of the evidence that they wanted to use has actually been withdrawn so that the judge didn't have to exclude it. I'm going to take you through it piece by piece. I'll leave the best parts for the end. First, when they charged Durk, the main allegation about him rapping in his lyrics was this lyric about him going, told me they got natty, got location, green light, seen your son on the news screaming, no, no. Okay, that lyric, if you play that lyric, then you play the video of Quando next to the murdered victim, no, no, you would have won major points with the jury. That lyric's not in the indictment anymore because Findling showed that those lyrics were written well before the murder. Couple more points. When they bought this case, they said the conspiracy started in August 2022. That's when Durk arranged to get these rentals, these flights. That's when he made arrangements for the bounty. Then they switched that and they said, actually, the conspiracy started back when Von died in November 2020. And they had to do that because they needed to bring in more lyrics. They needed to bring in Instagram comments and the podcast comments to build that whole story because it wasn't enough to just show him paying shooters and show him renting cars. Maybe they're not going to be able to show all that. Let's extend it back. Let's give the jury a bigger story. They withdrew evidence of a 2022 incident in Chicago, which appears to have been them wanting to show that, hey, look, another time in Chicago back in 2022, he paid for people to go do violence. Well, they took that off the table and they said, hey, we're not going to talk about any of that. And here's the big one. When they charged Durk, They said in the indictment about the bounty that at the direction of defendant Durk Banks, defendant Wilson, that's OTF Didi, would pay the bounty or monetary reward to the shooters. That's gone. We know OTF Didi Wilson is going to trial. So their main allegation on the bounty that Durk told Didi to pay the shooters is gone, and they're pivoting to another way to prove the bounty. What did they pivot to? They say the consideration, the thing Durk promised for the murder, was lucrative music opportunities with OTF, putting people in videos. That's their theory of the bounty payment. That is where you make your defense. The murder for hire statute requires quid pro quo. The murder has to be committed in exchange for something of economic value, not an after-the-fact gift, not something that you would have just happened anyway, not something you do normally as part of your business, an actual contract. Okay, and if all the government can do is point out that the shooters were in the music videos after the fact, a jury has a real question to answer about that was a murder contract or just some other part of a relationship between a lot of people who were connected in a lot of ways. Lil Durk update, the trial has been pushed.
Let's check out part 2, because I do think that's very interesting, and I do think that it is a good point. If they can't prove that there was at least conversations where Durk was saying that he was going to reward people, that is going to cause the case to fall apart.
At the same time that the government pivoted from saying Didi paid the shooters to saying, hey, it was putting people in music videos, they also added a fallback charge. So when they bought the case, the original indictment, there was no stalking charge. In the second superseding indictment against Durk, they added a stalking charge. And the stalking charge is important because it doesn't require any contract. No quid pro quo, no bounty, no payment theory. You can add that charge and simply prove that, hey, he was telling people to go do this. He didn't necessarily pay them to go do a murder, but he was telling them to go follow that guy. He was telling them to go stalk that guy. And a jury can look at it and say, a lot like in the Diddy case, that, hey, not exactly sure here. Very, very, very suspicious individual over here. I'm going to go ahead and hit him with the lesser charge. And so, when the government puts in that fallback charge later in the case, that tells you that they're not 100% sure on their theory, that they acknowledge that, hey, we need to have a fallback here. Keep an eye out for a couple things. One, the motion for an anonymous jury is still hanging out there. That means that the jurors go in there and their identities and names and addresses are not revealed. If that motion gets granted, it's going to change the complexion of this case significantly, because if you're a juror and you go in there and the judge tells you, hey, we're going to keep everything confidential and your identity secret because this is a dangerous case, well, you might rule a certain way based on hearing that information. The other thing to keep an eye out for, not all of the lyrics have been ruled on. A lot of the lyrics, especially those lyrics that have to do with bounties, the judge said, hey, when we get to closer to trial and I see how the government is going to try to prove a bounty, that's when I'll decide whether these lyrics about bounties are relevant. One thing to keep it a buck, and just to not sugarcoat it, the lyrics that Durk has out there about slide for Vaughn, I got it back in blood, you just don't know, that's how it's supposed to be. The podcast comments about I just don't be hearing those comments anymore about sliding for Vaughn, all that stuff is in. All that stuff is incredibly damaging to Durk. Had those things not been released into the public record, my God, this would be a much easier case to defend. All that being said, Durk trial, August 2026. This will be a trial for the ages.
So I do agree, and I think that if Durk loses this case, it is going to be his own undoing. He can hire all the lawyers that he wants, but he made a lot of statements that he knows he shouldn't have made. He told on himself non-stop. He made it very obvious to the general public that he was responsible for this murder, and now it basically is Operation Backtrack. Get the best lawyers you can to try and cover that up. That's just the facts of it, okay? Sorry if I offended anybody with that opinion, but it is what it is. So I will be keeping an eye out. When August rolls around, we will be covering this trial extensively, as I'm sure you can guess. And, we're just going to have to wait and see. We gonna see. Okay? But let me know what you thought of that. Let me know whether you think Durk's going to beat these murder charges with the help of Brian Steele. I'm still not fully convinced, but also I feel like he does have a shot. So look, let's see what happens, all right? Everyone says I'm hating on Durk, but at the end of the day, I'm just using my eyes and my ears and processing the facts. But I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching this one. I'm out, gang. Peace.